If you're joining us now, welcome. We are continuing to cover South Africa's 2014 elections, and in this segment of the show, we will be focusing on the youth. I'm now joined on the desk by Shaka Sisulu at Mayihlome Tshwete, and Mayihlome has just voted. Mayihlome, I want you to show us your vote mark. Thank you.
My ANC vote mark.
Did you say ANC? Is that who you voted for?
Yes.
Are you not concerned about all these other issues that people have been talking about?
What issues?
Nkandla, are you not concerned about the lack of jobs?
I'm concerned as much as any other South African is, but if I'm looking at policies, I don't think there's any party that can compete with the ANC.
Let's talk about those policies. Let's talk in particular about those policies as they pertain to the youth.
Sure.
Is there enough in there to say to the youth, come to the party? We just crossed to our reporter, Christine. She's out in Alex. Yeah. And she told us that she's seeing a lot of gogos, mamas, fathers, tatas, etc., but very few young people coming out to vote.
Well, I've been interacting with a lot of young people on social media, and some of them are even first-time voters, and they've been saying they're out there voting for the ANC. With relation to the ANC's policy, I think there's a lot there. ANC is committed to be spending about to ensuring that about 70% of government's business is going towards youth-owned companies. Yeah. And they've also been working on youth set-asides. But apart from the business aspect of it, there's also a lot of work that ANC is doing with regards to universities and FET colleges. Yeah. And strengthening those aspects to make sure that our youth are skilled and are more employable to go into the market. Yeah. So I have a lot of faith in the ANC's youth policy, even transformation policy, and that I don't see in any other party's policies.
Absolutely. Here in South Africa, the country is celebrating 20 years of democracy. CNBC Africa caught up with the Born Frees to get their input on what the 20 years of democracy meant to them.
For me, it basically means being given an opportunity to be who I want to be in this country. As we all know that South Africa is a democratic country, that simply means that I can get to be who I am and be the person that I feel comfortable with. It means giving a chance to life and giving a chance to explore and experience things that most of the people wanted to but couldn't do it.
It means so much because and nowadays we can do most of the things we couldn't do in the apartheid era.
Well, my mom used to tell me that during the apartheid era, things were hectic and that they didn't have any chance to prove their selves, you see. So now I'm so lucky because I can do anything that I want to do. I can go to varsity and study anything that I want. And then I think 20 years of democracy, it's been grateful to us and that it's our future.
The voices of the young, and they should be taking part in this election. Interesting. The first speaker said, it gives me the opportunity to be who I want to be. I love that. I really love that. It makes me understand that this person knows exactly the value of democracy. Shaka, welcome.
Thank you. I just want to pick up on one thing, the phrase born free. Born free. And we were having a little discussion about it offline. And Mike makes a great point that, born free in the context of today, actually, it's a phrase coined to mean born free of the ANC. Because the message being sent to born frees is, you're free, forget about the past, forget about all of that. Let's just keep it moving. And the reality is that there is no such thing as keeping moving. I'll give you an example. Parties will talk about how there's 40% unemployment, right? We don't mention that it's 40% unemployment for blacks. It's 7% unemployment for whites. So even when it comes down to, our dire straits, there's complete inequality. And we are acting as if we're just kind of going to move out of a situation of an orchestrated segregation, right? It was not just racial, it was also economic.
True.
It was orchestrated over a period of 80 to 90 years. And we're all acting as if like...
Actually, 350.
Yeah, if not longer.
No. Actually, it started in
the actual structures, the actual
actual structure started with the mining laws in 1872.
Yeah.
Right? That's when they started to say, look, black people, you can't own a stake in the mines.
Yeah.
You can't be carrying diamonds when everybody else is able to carry diamonds.
They even had the white survival line, a policy called the white survival line, where both miners, black and white, but the white miner was not allowed to be paid lower than a certain amount. The black miners could be paid as low as possible.
And that came in that 1918, right? That's the Calabar legislation.
Right.
It preceded so-called apartheid. So what we're talking about here is, how do we undo the legacy?
Yeah.
And yet still, like every other developmental state.
Shaka, your opportunity, go for it.
To give, well, look, here's the thing.
How do we do it? And is it contained and captured in the colors, or in the policies of the colors of the party you have?
Yes.
This party is possibly the only party that seriously considers this, and it's been seriously considering this.
Okay.
It has applied a lot of time and thought into how do you take a country, a developing economy, and grow that.
Okay.
And at the same time, apply redress.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
And the reason that you found that in the 90s, between 94 and 2008, South Africa had the longest period of sustained, uninterrupted growth up until the world recession.
The longest actually since 1945.
Was because the ANC had thoroughly considered its options. And you'd find guys on the right, find guys on the left, and you'd find there's always these different extremes pushing and pulling, and suddenly there's almost like a moderate center being found. And the reason that is because people understand that it's not just a situation of saying, let's go take everything back.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Because then you have a situation like
I know who
Zimbabwe.
you are talking about now. Okay. I want solutions in respect of the ANC in addressing particular issues that are facing the youth.
I think sorry, Shaka, if I can steal, I think they exist. I mean, if you look at what has been achieved over the last 20 years, they exist in different spheres. They exist in the social sphere. Government has focused itself on building more skills, building more hospitals. I mean, the success of what's going to be the success of the NHA is going to be huge, especially for the ordinary South African who private healthcare for them is something that they'll never see.
True.
But with NHI, it becomes a lot closer to reality for them. So that's happening in terms of social infrastructure that government is currently outrolling. But it's also happening in the sense of business. I heard your earlier speaker speaking about BEE and transformation, and one of your speakers made a very good point about we shouldn't only focus on the shareholder side of BEE. We should look at also the skills development side, the enterprise development,
education,
and even procurement. And even procurement. Well, I'm just speaking about the BEE codes, even procurement side. So all these things government is doing, and some of them have produced great results. I mean, we are products of those policies. You're now having a blossoming black middle class. You are having a more educated youth, and that's all a result of this. So the solutions are happening as we speak. What we can talk about is making sure that they have a wider reach and they have a faster outputs.
That was one of my points about the inclusiveness, about the fact that these policies right at the outset should have had inclusiveness as a central tenet.
What does inclusiveness mean?
In absolutely not leaving anybody out.
I think
because when we talk now about unemployment of the youth,
let us talk about
it's
not leaving
harder
anyone
on youth than outside.
Hang on, let's talk about not leaving anyone out. Okay. So because of the ANC policy framework, what you've had is that kids that don't get a meal at home, there's feeding schemes that are put in place, right? There's a framework for education to say that let's migrate as many kids, whether they're poor or rich, whatever the case is, through a schooling system so that they're able to self-actualize. At the same time, let us create an environment where more jobs can be created. At the same time, let us create a safety net. The safety net in South Africa, today what South Africa spends on social grants was the equivalent of the entire economy in 94. So, it's not the idea of inclusiveness is being at the center, being at the heart of each and every policy.
Yeah.
But
now, it's not going to like happen overnight. So you're asking about young people.
We should also add that you can't also expect government and the ANC to be the manufacturer of that inclusiveness. They put policies.
It's society as a whole.
But I'm speaking specifically to business. And many of us feel that private sector hasn't come to the party in this aspect.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know the exact number. You have a private sector that sits on about
680
600 billion.
More than
But
500
they're not
billion,
reinvesting back into the South African economy.
Yeah.
They are more focused on profit maximization, and that's continuously happening. So I think government now
In fact, the attitude now is hold South Africa, invest Africa. So look, I mean, it's great in that respect, you know, but there is an inherent Afro-pessimism about South Africa that exists, you know, amongst those that are at the forefront of driving the economy.
South Africans are voting in the 5th democratic elections in this country. So we've got the big parties, the African National Congress, EFF of Julius Malema, DAs from Helen Zille, and of course Ahang SA, Mampele Rampele. And they are all out there trying to understand if they are going to be in parliament, or indeed if they are going to be entrusted with the responsibility of setting up the next government. In the meantime, we are talking about some of the issues that people are voting on, and one of those is addressing the issue of youth unemployment. And my guests with me in the studio are Shaka Sisulu and Mayihlome Tshwete. Gentlemen, let's talk a little bit about what the ANC hasn't done. And I know you are both on the ANC side. And as I was saying to you earlier, one of my key criticisms of the ANC is that they did not make education free for everybody in 1994. What would you say to that?
Well, as we were speaking offline, and you noted that ANC in 1994 had a number of financial restraints that they couldn't do, a number of social programs that they would have loved to done.
Sure.
And some of this rhetoric is used by a number of parties that free education, free this, raise everything to this amount, double social grants, and all these things. But the reality is that we do function on a very restrained fiscus.
Agreed.
Unless we are working harder on other ways to start expanding our revenue streams for our fiscus, then making those type of promises is a danger in itself. But I do think the ANC has had a number of successes in trying to make education as affordable as possible for the poorest of the poor. They've had successes in that, even at university level. You've seen them commit billions to students. But ultimately, the output and those graduates that come out of those programs, we must still have a discussion about what does the private sector do to those graduates that come out of those programs. Why is there a higher intake of white graduates that come out of those programs compared to black graduates? Why are kids with engineering degrees still sitting at home when the private sector has means to invest in growth, but they're not doing so? So that's another discussion we should be
Absolutely, that's another discussion.
I mean, effectively, ANC's policy stemming from the Freedom Charter, right? It's ANC's wish that education is free for everyone up until past varsity. Yeah. And the constraint, as he has mentioned, has been the fiscus, the fact that we inherited a heavy apartheid debt, right? But the reality is that if you look at the schooling system, okay, those who can't afford to pay, right, go to no-fee schools. Right? And the idea has been that the same quality of education applies there that it does in places where people would be able to subsidize and top up.
Agreed.
Currently, the issue, I think it's a bit of a misnomer to say, the ANC should have had free education, when we know that the amount of money being invested in education isn't the issue. Because South Africa per capita is one of the highest spending countries in terms of education per person.
Necessarily
in the system.
so, because of apartheid, which deliberately kept the black population down.
But the point is, you can't simply change it by throwing money at the problem.
I agree with you.
Right? Now, we know that one of the issues that we've had with the education system is that first and foremost, you had to bring, all these different departments together, consolidated, build one united department, one united curriculum, and so on and so forth. And you also have to deal with the legacy of Bantu education. 3 generations of Bantu education. So so-and-so teaches so-and-so in Bantu education, and so-and-so teaches so-and-so. And those are our teachers now, right? So the quality aspect is inherently going to there's going to be an issue. The quality of the kids being taught in a school where it was white teachers who have not had the constraint inherently from a very young age is going to be very different to a black school.
I agree. I agree.
And this is not an issue that you can suddenly say, let's throw more money at it.
It's not a switch.
Exactly.
Point taken. What is the ANC bringing to the table 2014 to address particularly youth unemployment? 72% of all those unemployed are youth.
All right, here's what the ANC understands. For South Africa to grow, we need to become a more productive, exporting country.
Yeah.
Right? One of the things that we need is to then increase our output in terms of manufacturing.
Right.
One of the things that's required for that is to increase our power, the amount of power that we actually have in the country.
Yeah.
So we're building power stations. In the building of power stations, as Mai said, a certain percentage of that is going to be dedicated to youth.
Right.
In terms of employment and in terms of empowerment, in terms of people being able to sell, whether it's gumboots or whether it's, electrodes.
Sure.
Right. Then South Africa is also building roads and expanding the infrastructure, rail and so on. Why? So that it makes it cheaper for people to move to and for work, for people to go and find work and so on and so forth. Okay.
Yeah.
There is other infrastructure being built, broadband. It makes it easier for people to access information and so on. So the idea that the ANC has is, look, it's time to reinvest in the infrastructure of South Africa.
Right.
As we reinvest, we know that 75% of all goods that government is now going to be buying is going to come from local players.
Yeah.
And from all the projects, 60% is dedicated to youth. We know that Mai mentioned the FETs, right? The FETs, 12 new campuses are being built, and the FETs are now going to have an integrated program so that when you leave your last year, it's going to be part of the workplace. You're going to leave there having had experience and education as well.
Yeah.
We know that different sectors like the agro sector are going to be supported so that young people who have small holdings or who put cooperatives together